Welcome to the Transformed Man Show. Here is your host, Mr. Sean Nicholas.
When we think about emotional intelligence, we often think about being intelligent on reading the emotions of other people. But real emotional intelligence happens in understanding our emotions, the energy of our emotions, and the purpose of our emotions. So in this episode of the Transformed Man Show, we're talking to emotional intelligence expert Nicholas De Castella. Nicholas is going to deconstruct what emotional intelligence is and give us steps on how we can move toward emotional mastery. Enjoy the show. Nicholas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean. Great to be here.
Nicholas, now many of us have heard about emotional intelligence, but I feel that we've mostly just scratched the surface of emotions and still have so much more to learn to get to that level of emotional mastery that can empower us for positive growth and development. Now, this emotional mastery, which is your area of expertise, is something I'm really looking forward to discovering throughout the show. But first, let's start with understanding, why do we have emotions?
Well, basically, our emotions are our life force energy. They give us the fuel to do things in our life. So if you wake up in the morning and you don't have any emotion, you probably won't get out of bed. And in fact, really, that's the definition of depression. You know, depression is pushing the emotion down. So all of our emotions have a good purpose that help us to live our life more fully. They are energy. So if you get angry, you get more pumped up, we call it. You get energy to do things. And they're also contained within them is wisdom, intelligence, because they inform us. So for instance, if I get angry, there's something going on that I'm not happy about. There's something, I don't like it, like this is how we say it. So our emotions are a vital part of our human experience. We're physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that we've grown up in teaching us that your emotions actually don't exist, that they're not real. So if you're feeling sad, someone will tell you to cheer up. If you're feeling angry, they'll say, just calm down. Or if you're scared, they'll say, there's nothing to worry about. Just look on the bright side and things like that. So we grow up with the impression that emotions are a byproduct of what we're thinking about. And mainstream psychology often focuses on trying to change the thinking to get rid of the emotion. And we all, because we don't have this emotional mastery, we don't know what emotional intelligence is, we don't know how to work with our emotions to actually empower us to get what we want, to be successful and deepen relationships and find inner peace and connect to our heart's guidance. We struggle and we bury the emotions and they don't go away. They operate from the background. So in a very simple way, it's very useful to think of your emotions as energy. Emotions are energy. And if you think of like energy in a battery, it's stored in the body. So unexpressed emotions don't disappear. They just get stored in what we call pools of emotion. So we all walk around with a pool of repressed anger, sadness, fear. It's all stored in the body, and it doesn't just sit there dormant because it's energy, and energy never sits still. It's always moving. And so it actually, those emotions drive us from the background and create excessive busyness in our mind, negative thinking, restlessness, driving addictions. They run us from the background if we don't acknowledge them. And what we teach in the emotional mastery work that I do is how to actually use that life force energy to propel us towards achieving what we want.
Yeah. And so so emotions are energy, but there was something that you said before, that they're energy with purpose. They have a purpose in our life. And that's a great understanding, because that means that we need to, I feel we need to then become aware of our emotions and which emotions we're sensing and feeling, so that we can then look at what is the purpose of that emotion. And if I can, for some understanding, I know with myself and my anxiety that showed up as an energy, I interpreted that for many, many years as just hunger.
Yeah.
Because it showed up, there was this energy that was sort of in and around my stomach. And so I interpreted that energy of anxiety as hunger. And so to quell that energy, because I didn't like it, I would eat. And it worked well for a while, but it made me obese and led me down a path of ill health. And so that awareness now for me, that energy that shows up is anxiety, and that I need to address that, not just quell it with food, or as other people may do with addictions of some other sort. How do we start opening ourselves up to that awareness of what each of these energy feelings in us is, whether it be fear, anxiety, sadness? How do we start with emotional awareness?
Well, emotional awareness is the starting place. Maybe we could back off one step before that even. In our human experience, we're either thinking, so we're running thoughts and stories in our mind, or we're feeling. So we only operate as humans is in those two modes, thinking or feeling, right? So the first step of awareness is, where am I? Am I just running stories? And because of all the electronics and the internet and all the technology, we're spending more and more time thinking in the thinking abstract world that's disconnected from the experience that's actually present to us in this moment. And the more disconnected we become, the more real the stories look. And so it's like going to the movies. We go to a movie, we sit in the movie, and we laugh and we cry and we feel scared and we get angry. And we actually are running movies in our own heads all day. And the more disconnected or disassociated we are from our body and from the present moment, the more real the stories actually look, and the more emotional turmoil we create. So the first step in raising emotional intelligence is recognizing, is this a story about something that doesn't exist in the present moment? Or is this actually something that relates to where I am in my life right now? And probably for most of us, 90% of our emotions are what we call false emotion or mind-generated emotion, because they're not coming from the present moment. So, for instance, if you have an exam or an interview tomorrow, or you've got to go and talk to the boss or your partner or whatever, you could start running a story about what that's going to be like and create all this emotional turmoil, anxiety, particularly because anxiety is related to fear, that actually doesn't relate to what's actually present in this moment, which is, you might be sitting in the couch, on your couch and having a cup of tea and watching a nice movie or sitting in the sun even, or going for a walk, and you could miss that part of your life because you're worried about what's going to happen in the future, right? Yeah. So the first step in raising emotional intelligence is learning to distinguish between thinking and feeling and the stories that we're running and the actual experience that we're in. So once you get that, and that will immediately if you suffer from anxiety, that will immediately reduce your anxiety by at least 50% and probably more likely 90%.
Yeah.
Well, I've had people coming to sessions having panic attacks on the way to the session, and I've just mapped out some very simple ideas like what I'm talking about, gone home and never had another panic attack, because they just started to realize most of this emotion is being created by the stories that I'm running, and I can just put them down. So it's useful to know what not to do, but it's much more useful to know what to do. So if we're not running stories, then what are we going to do? And what we need to do is come in the present moment. And now, you know, mainstream psychology is teaching mindfulness, which we've been teaching at our workshops since 96, so 24 years. And that's just starting to come in now in mainstream psychology about living in the present moment. And that's an Eastern practice that's been going for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But so that's the first step. The second step then is to start to become emotionally literate, start to understand what the good purpose of our emotions is, and learn how to recognize how they turn up in our body, because all emotions are expressed in the body as physical sensations. So you can actually read your body to identify what's the predominant emotion that's present in any moment. And in the work that I do, we kind of simplify things down to 6 primary emotions: 2 in the chest, 2 in the solar plexus, and 2 in the belly. And those 6 start to give us a framework for starting to recognize, this emotion is actually da 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 da. So the 2 in the chest are joy, which obviously comes when we get something that we want. That's an emotional energy that's created. If somebody gives you something that you've always wanted, like let's say it's a Swiss pocket knife or something with your name engraved on it, and you go, oh, that's so wonderful. It's great. And you feel this elation. That's emotional energy that's created from joy. And then if you're out on your farm and you lose your Swiss Army pocket knife, you're like, you feel this heaviness, and that heaviness is the sadness. So in our chest, in our heart, you feel joy and sadness as well as love, but we might come back to that later on.
Yep.
And then a little lower down the middle of the torso is excitement and fear. So excitement is when you think you're going to get something good. So it's coming up to your birthday and you have a sense that it's going to be a fun day and you're getting excited. Let's say you're going to have a picnic, you've got a big party organized, you've got 80 friends coming over. And then the day before the party, the weather forecast is thunderstorm and rain. And suddenly that excitement starts to turn to fear. Like, oh my God, it's going to be a shocking day now. So those 2, excitement and fear, are buddies. One expecting a positive future and the second expecting a negative future, fear. And they're mostly located in the solar plexus in the stomach area. So we feel nauseous, and that might have been what you were referring to.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. That's exactly where fear and anxiety show up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then in the guts is this other 2, which is passion, enthusiasm, like gut energy. We just grit things out. We have that drive and that determination from our guts. And then anger in the guts too. So we say, I've had a gut full, and other places in the body too, like with the anger, it's often in the shoulder blades and the neck and the shoulders, because we clench our fists when we're angry. We go into fights, and so we get that going up there. But basically in the torso, those are the 6 primary emotions. Yeah. And it's useful just to boil it down to that and start to go, what's the emotion? And there's variations on those. So there might be nervous, anxious, frightened, terrified, petrified. There's a spectrum along each of those 6 that we go on. So you start to work that out, and then you can take a breath in your body and start to tune in to what's actually going on in my body. And a lot of people are more or less blank or numb, and they don't quite realize that, even though they might be generating mind-generated emotion from the stories and think that they're really emotional, but actually when they come in the present moment and check into their body, there might be quite a lot of emptiness. And that's a really common place to start, and a valid place, because we live in a culture where we've been invalidated for what we're feeling, and we've closed down on trauma, and we've disassociated from feelings, and we numb them out, and we get into our addictions of overeating and drinking and being busy and stuff, and that's all just constantly numbing our body out. And so we lose touch with this biofeedback device that we're living in, that we can actually become more sensitive to and learn to read the physical body as a source of intelligence also that links in to the emotional intelligence.
And that's important. I mean, it's really important, and it's important what you said there. And I like the steps of bringing yourself to the presence and present time, and tapping in and really sensing what is actually happening. The what is rather than the what if.
Yes.
And understanding, and especially the more we tap into external messaging, either movies or media, or going to the footy, or attaching our emotions to things outside of us, we're really mixing up and still just sitting in the stories. We're not tapping into what's inside us. So that presence and bringing ourself to the present time is a really important step. And I think I'm just reflecting on my journey, and that was probably one of the things most powerful things for me, to then move into that emotional literacy, which I'm probably still in now, learning. But just that mindful presence is very powerful.
Absolutely. And like I was an international athlete. I represented Australia in 4 world championships, and I just ran from my mind. I just had used willpower to achieve what I did, and I ended up with chronic fatigue because I just ran my body into the ground with this iron will, and that was my wake up. And then we use breath work, and breath work is a dynamic breathing technique that activates a repressed emotional energy that we're carrying. And I had this big heart opening where this roar, like a freight train of emotion, just came pouring through me. I had no idea what it was about or where it came from, but this is in 1992, and it was so powerful that it woke me up to realizing that my emotions are independently self-existing of their own side, that they're real. They're not just a product of my mind, because I had no idea what this was all about. And that really set me on a path to want to understand my emotions. And obviously that was like 28 years ago. And following that path has been just a blessing, really. And my life has totally transformed, and I live a really blessed life. I live on our retreat center in the Dandenong Ranges rainforest. We have a wonderful heart-centered community, have a beautiful, passionate, loving relationship with Susan of 20 years. We have 2 teenage boys that are really blossoming with their own challenges, learning challenges, but they're actually extraordinary. And so, and my health and vitality is really great. I'm fitter now than I was 10 years ago, as it turns out. Sorted out an old running calf injury, so learning to recognize the emotion is the start, and then the next piece on that you started to allude towards of being present with it is actually processing that emotional baggage that we all carry around with us. And the reality is that you don't heal emotion from the past until you feel it in your body. So we say the healing is in the feeling. So there's a lot of new age practices that are actually trying to get rid of the emotions without feeling them, like reframing and stuff like that. which has a place, but it's not healing the emotions. And
Mm.
we have a lot of people come and do our workshops who feel all this emotion, and they go, oh, I thought I'd sorted all of that out, but all the emotion is still sitting there underneath because they haven't gone there. Because this sector, this of the 4 sections of being, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, it's, if you imagine a 4-cylinder car, in our culture, it's like we're only running on 3 cylinders.
Yeah.
And so you bring in the emotional intelligence piece, and it's like, oh, this is the missing piece of the puzzle that makes everything fit together.
Yeah.
And it all works. So we all need, in the Western culture, we all need to heal all the emotions that we've repressed, because as we repress the emotions, we become disconnected.
Yeah.
Not just from the emotion, but from our core, from the peace and the love and the happiness and the contentment that's within us.
Yeah.
And so every time that we repress a feeling or disconnect from it, we become more disconnected, less present. Life becomes more grey and dull and less engaged. And conversely, every time that we feel an emotion that we've repressed, we reconnect and we become more present, more open-hearted, more alive, more in relationship with ourselves and each other and the planet. So that process only happens in the present moment, when we're in our body and when we're allowing the emotion to come through. And that practice, being able to do that, it's a practice. It's something like riding a bike. You have to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And ideally you learn how to do it with gentleness and ease and without traumatizing yourself.
Yeah.
It's a dissolving or melting kind of a process.
And it's something that's not taught to us, and as children and in our lives growing up, but also generationally. It wasn't taught generations ago, so the generations haven't passed that down. Perhaps in Eastern cultures more it is, but in our modern Western culture, it's not taught, and we still see it today. To seeing kids being thrown an iPad to escape from being mindful and present, and parents on their phone while their kids playing in the park, and that sort of stuff that's still happening. And then all this external stuff that keeps getting fed to us in multiple different sensory environments. There's more and more need, Nicholas, for what you're doing, and I'm sold on it, because I know the emotional literacy and that in myself has been really powerful for me, and there's still a long way for me to go.
Well,
which is great.
We all have a way to go. I still have a way to go.
Yeah, but it's great. It's great because it's like there's another level of growth every time I experience it again and again and again. There's another level of growth, and so and what's coming through from your conversation is that, and it's really important, I feel, for people to understand, is that it's doing, not so much doing the work, but it's the self-understanding and the self-learning. Whereas when I first came across emotional intelligence through a business point of view, it was more about how do we understand emotions so that we can understand other people and manage them and all that sort of stuff. And I now look at that and I go, that is just the total opposite of what emotional intelligence is.
Yeah, that's great.
And what I found, and I'd love for you to sort of explore this with me, is that the more I got literate on my emotions, the more understanding I had of my emotions, the more understanding I had of the emotions of other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of great points in there. I think because the Western culture is centered in the head, we're cognitively orientated, like we're based on Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. And so psychology is all about understanding the mind, like the cognitive mind, the thinking processes, and the function of the brain and stuff like that. But there's a lot of research now, the Institute of Heart Math, showing that your heart is intelligent and that your heart is actually informing how you're thinking. And like this is like the king that wore no clothes, you know, like it's so obvious when you can see it, but our society, like you said, has grown up with repressed emotion. And only, you know, like our parents' generation went to war and they had to kill people, they had to shoot each other, like, and so we had to bury your emotions to be able to do that. And so we've come out of a lot of hardship. But so that capacity to feel and allow the emotions is something that we haven't grown up with, and we suffer because of that big time.
Yeah. And so so we've started on the journey of, first of all, you know, mindful practice, being present, starting to realize and notice the energy and the awareness.
Yeah.
And then getting into the literacy and feeling the energy, emotional energy inside us. Where do we go once we've got to that stage of feeling it?
Yeah.
What do we do once we're feeling that energy?
Okay, so there's lots of minor pieces in this that help. Basically, probably the biggest one that helps to process the emotion through is the breath. And we all know that when we're stressed or anxious, we hold our breath. Now, over a lifetime of doing that, our breathing mechanism gets locked up. It gets distorted, and we do futile breathing, short, shallow, irregular breathing. That triggers anxiety. It activates that sympathetic nervous system. And so the first thing is to check your breath, okay? Because the emotional energy, when you start to connect directly with it, it's almost like another entity in your body. And you have your mind, your brain, which is used to being the controller. And then there's the emotion going on in your body. And there's these two different things happening. And often that controller mind is going, oh my God, I'm going to go out of control here. And it wants to lock down. And so you just have to coach your mind along and go, this is just emotion. And that's where emotional literacy helps, is that an understanding that your body is intelligent and that it's built for wholeness. There's a basic goodness and a life force energy that's restorative all of the time if we just let go of control. But, you know, our culture is based on fear. We're trying to control everything. And that basically means that we don't trust life. But, you know, your body and our bodies are all built for wholeness and happiness and peace. And so once you start to recognize the emotion, what a lot of people do is hold the breath, and they'll lock up and they'll tense up. And so you want to go the other way, relax the body and relax the breath. So basically, you want to remember that when you're holding your breath, you're locking the emotion down. And when you're breathing, you're allowing the emotion to flow. And the breath is a real key because it brings us in the present moment. It energizes the body and it creates flow. And so if you're a bit nervous, if you're working with fear, say anxiety, then that's very kind of volatile. The fear kind of starts off little and then it can become really overwhelming really fast. And so with the breath, you just want to breathe a real gentle, soft breath just to allow the energy to dissipate, to flow. So that's a really big thing. The second part...
Is that sort of like with that breath, it just gives you that chance to, I sometimes say it to myself, is just catch the energy and just holding it. Just holding it lightly, just sort of...
hold it lightly, like a tissue in your hand, you might think like that. It's just be gentle with it. I think more of like, particularly with fear, if you go and put your foot in a cold dam, it's like, you pull out. So you just want to kind of go up to the edge of the dam and like the fit to the emotion. You just need to go to the edge of the emotion. You don't have to jump in the middle of the dam.
Yeah.
So
using the breath just to guide you slowly into the emotion rather than jumping in there or jumping back.
Yeah. Yeah, so you just come up to the edge of it or hold it lightly. The only thing, I wouldn't use the word holding myself, because we're actually trying to let go. So just be present with it. Mostly I would think more about going slowly and going gently and allowing, because we want to stay bigger than the emotion. And when the emotional intensity goes up, often it feels like it's bigger than us, and then we start locking down because it becomes overwhelming. This is particularly with fear, and sometimes it can be other emotions that are linked to fear. Like if there's a lot of grief inside, then you might get scared of how much grief or how intense the feeling is. So the fear can come in with the sadness, because a lot of fear is about letting go of control. There's three primary fears, and they are being overwhelmed by being out of control, being overwhelmed by the intensity, and being annihilated by the emptiness, like in isolation or shame or rejection. Kind of triggers those. So there's three fears, primary fears. But so you're working all the time with softening and relaxing, and what underpins this process of surrender is this understanding of basic goodness, that like as soon as you cut your finger, white blood cells start rushing to that side to heal it, right? So your body is all the time trying to restore itself and come back to wholeness. And from an emotional well-being point of view, that means come back to peace, come back to happiness and love. And those peace, happiness, love, contentment, freedom, those five qualities are, in my mind, not emotions, they're heart qualities. And I mentioned that before. So the emotions are more energy that's activated in our interaction with the world outside of us. So you get something or you lose something. Whereas the heart qualities, peace, love, happiness, contentment, freedom, they're all qualities that rise up from within us when we go inside and we connect deeply inside. And that's another shift.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that's where we want to be, and that's where our body is trying to take us all the time. And our emotions are the relationship play out when we have this relationship with everything in our world, other people, our environment and stuff like that. But there's this overarching purpose to get us back to this wholeness, back to this.
Yeah.
Back
so
to this
that's a natural state. Okay. Yeah. So in nature, our natural way of being is that the good purpose of the emotions is that they're energy that get activated in different situations for good reasons, right? So if you're being attacked, you need to get angry to run away or to fight off. So, and if you're in a potential area, if there's a lion in the jungle somewhere near you, you want to be frightened. Because fear activates our system. So we're more acute in how we focus on things, and our hearing becomes more acute, and we act on go in our energy body, so all of the emotions have a good purpose, and we want to be able to use that in our life, those in a positive way. You can when you have these skills.
So Nicholas, and you've been working with in this area with people for over 20 years without sort of sharing any names or anything. Could you share some things you've witnessed when people have gone through this journey?
Yeah.
What impact it's had on them in their life?
Probably one of the most amazing things that I've seen was there was a guy who was a roof worker, and he fell off a roof in the country and landed on his feet. He didn't break any bones, but he crushed all the skin underneath his feet, and he was in agony, and he's in the country. So it took 6 hours for the doctors to get there. Now, this guy came to a 2-day workshop in Swan Hill. He'd been on unemployment benefits for 8 years, sitting on the couch, driving his family nuts. And he did this breathwork session, and the pain that he experienced on that day came up in the session, and the emotion came up all about it. And he worked through it. He was present to it. And when we finished the session, we sat in a circle and shared about how we were feeling and the experience. He said in that circle, he said, "This is the first time in 8 years that I don't have any pain in my feet." And after that workshop, he went back to work. He got up and went back to work and got on with his life.
Wow.
So I spent 10 years running workshops in Horsham with medical doctor Andrew Hallwood during the big drought in Victoria, working with farmers going through the drought and depression and all kinds of illnesses. And this doctor put 200 people through Passionately Alive in those 10 years because he could see the direct correlation between emotional repression and pain and disease in our body. So that's, testimony to how powerful this is. People that I work with, we teach pain management techniques. And so people commonly, after they learn the skills that we teach, have medical operations and don't have any painkillers after the operation at all.
Wow.
It's in hospital straight away.
Yeah.
So this
So somehow from those stories, and especially the roof worker, he had the physical pain initially, but then post that trauma, all this other emotional pain was sort of locked into this sensory feeling that he sort of repressed down into where he sensed that and felt that physical trauma.
Yeah, so a bit like with your eating thing, you confused.
Yes, explore my eating thing.
And the eating thing is not uncommon actually, but people feel empty often inside. And there's kind of this what looks like something's missing, feels like something's missing inside, and probably the thing that's missing is connection.
Yeah.
And so people eat because they want to try and fill up that emptiness. But interestingly, the Buddhists say that the true nature of reality, the ultimate nature of reality, is emptiness. And so we in the West are very unfamiliar with relating to emptiness because we're operating in relation to things all the time, objects, and most of our experience is about relating to objects, so that when we have an experience of emptiness, we don't know how to relate to that, and we start to panic. And I think a lot of people, from my experience, are on medication because they actually don't know how to relate to that experience of emptiness, which is a gateway to spiritual experiences. So we had a chap in our last Passionately Alive a couple of weeks ago who was 65, retired, and kind of lost meaning and purpose in his life. And he had this emptiness happening. And in the Passionately Alive, with we come in at lots of different angles of mindfulness and presence and dancing and sounding and mastering the emotion, doing the anger release work and the breath work and all of this stuff. He started to reconnect again and fill up kind of basically from the inside out, and has kind of rejuvenated his life, and he's just headed down to Gippsland camping. He'd lost his passion for everything, and he's now back on top of his life and ready to move on to the next level. So this whole emptiness thing is a big thing, actually. Yeah.
And I just wrote fear of relating to emptiness. Something for me to explore. I like it. So, Nicholas, you talked about Passionately Alive, which is one of your core programs. Mm-hmm. Tell us more about that, and what would people expect?
Mm-hmm.
Why would people want to come along to Passionately Alive, apart from some of the transformative stories that you've just talked about?
Yeah. Why would people come to Passionately Alive? People come to Passionately Alive for a whole range of areas, because you're aware, Sean, but the people that are listening are probably picking up that how we work with our emotions affects everything in our life. It affects our sense of self-love and self-worth, our sense of inner peace and happiness. It affects how we relate to each other as well, how to deepen intimacy and connection, how to be in touch with your heart and find direction and meaning and purpose in your life, how to be really alive and enjoy the juice in life, you know. So people come to Passionately Alive often because they're anxious, they've experienced some loss, you know, and that could be a loss of a loved one. They're stuck in their life, they feel blocked, they're not moving ahead in their life. Some people come to Passionately Alive because they're self-actualizing. So they actually come along because they know that emotional intelligence is actually an ingredient in the most happy and successful people in the world, which was
real emotional intelligence. Intelligence in
not sales emotional intelligence,
not management emotional intelligence.
That's right. So yes. And so Passionately Alive, it's a 3.5-day residential program that starts on a Thursday night at 7 and runs through to Sunday afternoon. People come here to our retreat center. We have beautiful rainforest here with towering fern trees and gum trees. It's just beautiful. It's only takes me 35 minutes to get to the center of Melbourne from here. So we've managed to do a Houdini on this. And they come and they stay with us, and so it's residential, everything's laid on, the meals, and they stay here, and then we just go in depth, and the process deepens as we go, and we only have 16 people maximum, so it's a small intimate group where everybody gets a lot of support, and it's a very loving space. And people learn these skills to master their emotions and really live their life at a higher level. And something that, you know, the next piece on from where we've been talking today is we started off talking about the stories in the mind, and then the next step is coming into your body and into the present moment. And then the next step, the third step, is feeling the emotion, the energy that's moving, and learning how to work with that. And when you do that, you actually pop through to the fourth level, which is the heart intelligence. And the qualities of the heart are what we mentioned before: peace, happiness, love, contentment, freedom, things like that. And really, you have to journey through the emotional layer to connect in the heart fully. And that's where people try to do it by meditating in their head, but they're not going to actually become more present and open-hearted and engaged. And because we don't know how to journey through that emotional layer like a rainbow cake, you know, you're going down, people bounce off their emotions and they go back up in their head on another story, or turn the TV on, or go on the internet, or whatever, you know, eat, or we get into our addictions then. So learning how to journey through that emotional layer is the only way that you can really connect to your heart. And so you connect to the heart, and then the ultimate goal in the work that I do is to live from your heart. And so that means to live with peace, and acceptance is the practice, to live with love, and the practice is compassion, to live with gratitude, and the practice is appreciation in your everyday life, to live with courage, the practice is learning to welcome suffering in, to cultivate grit, you know, and determination, to practice living with wealth, creating wealth, and the practice is generosity. So these practices are what we call heart-centered living then. That's the ultimate outcome from the work that we're doing. And as long as you're on planet Earth, you're enrolled in the school called Earth School, and there's going to be challenges sent to you, and you come to Passionately Alive and you get like a good set of hiking boots to cover the highs and the lows in life. And, you know, we've had people delivered to Passionately Alive in the middle of an emotional breakdown. We had a guy he ran the, he was up in, he's the manager, I think, of the Mount Buller ski hire, one of the ski hire companies there. He was delivered to us in the middle of a meltdown, non-functioning on Thursday night. And he went home on Monday back on top of the world and went back to work and moved on with his life.
Wow.
You know? Because, he dealt with the emotion, and you can make huge shift in a short amount of time by dealing with the emotions, whereas doing the headway takes years and years. And
I like the analogy of you equipping us, or equipping the people that attend Passionately Alive with the equipment and with the tools and with the knowledge and the processes that they can then use that heart-centered living to guide their way and cope with and manage and live with what this school of earth life is.
The goal is to thrive.
Yeah.
No, the goal is to really enjoy our life and really blossom and really have a fabulous life, to be able to live life fully. But what happens for people that don't have emotional intelligence skills is we start off in life so open, and, as a child, life is beautiful and magical and wonderful and a big adventure playground. And then we get hurt and we close down, and we get hurt and we close down, and we get hurt, and we end up living in a cocoon. We build this protection defense mechanisms, and we start to not be so open to life and not live life fully. So the emotional intelligence skills, and they are skills that you use, and they're, as I mentioned, it's kind of ultimately it's a spiritual journey, but they're skills to be able to live your life fully. And when you fall off the horse, which is a lot of people turn up PA when they've fallen off the horse of life and been sitting on the ground, and we do two things at PA. We help people to heal the emotions that are holding them back in that moment. And in the same process, we teach them the skills to be able to master their emotions for the rest of their life. And some people hang around with us. We have people that are still coming to gatherings. Like yesterday, we have an ongoing growth gathering of people who have been working with us for 20 years. And some people just get what they want, and then they go on and, they go on. We had a guy come yesterday, I haven't seen him for 10 years, and his dad died 2 weeks ago. And he saw the text that I sent out and thought, oh, this is a good time. And he come back and he's checked in, and he still thinks about us all the time. And we haven't heard from him. He's out there living his life. He's got 7 children, this guy. Which is,
he's really taking on.
It's like a badge of honor, that one. And lovely, open-hearted man. So it's really about. It's not just about healing this yucky stuff and coping with battling the weather of life. It's really about getting on top of your life and enjoying it fully.
And harnessing that power that we've been given, that energy. I mean, we've been given these gifts of emotion for a purpose. To get us to that peace and to put us in that heart-centered space. And what you're teaching is, how do we harness that energy, that power of these gifts that are given to us, so that we can get to that place and be in that place of wholeness?
Yes. Yeah. It's how can we be at our best, whatever that is. If you want to be an Olympic athlete, if you want to be a world, conquering entrepreneur, if you want to have the best family life, whatever it is, it's how can we show up in our best, be at our best for the world. And we train practitioners.
That best has to be internally our best. Not just the facade that the modern society we put up, or the Insta post or the Photoshop image. It's really that best inside, which really is that fulfilling contentment.
So it's about being congruent, being real. So we kind of have 5 steps, actually. We get clarity about where we are and where we want to go and get clarity about the emotional literacy. So become more self-aware is the first step. The second step is to clear the emotional baggage that weighs us down and holds us back and creates all the turmoil and the suffering that's really so unnecessary. And then when we clear that emotional baggage, the third step is to connect in our heart, which we talked about. And then the next step on is to be congruent, which we're just saying is to be real, to be authentic, to show up as we are and to live the life that we're meant to live. And then the fifth step is to commit, to engage and to live life fully.
Excellent. Well, I hope everyone listening to this has taken this in, and even if they've taken the thought of taking the journey to being more emotionally literate and looking at emotional intelligence in a different way, then that's powerful, because then they can take the next step. And I would recommend their next step is to connect with you. Go to your website, eq.net.au.
That's it.
Find out when the next Passionately Alive event is. And I see that on your site there at eq.net.au, you have a free ebook on the keys to emotional mastery, Passionately Alive. So what a bonus that is to hand that out to people.
I noticed you downloaded it too.
Yes, I doing my work and my homework on my work on myself.
That's a great resource, yeah.
It is a great resource, and I think even if people are still skeptical, but they know that perhaps something is missing, that missing piece of the puzzle, they know something, I would just encourage them to explore this. Look, I know my journey with developing my real emotional intelligence has been powerful, and that's why I sort of wanted to get you on the show to explore that more and share that with others. And so I just encourage people just to connect with you, Nicholas. Follow, just have a look at it, just explore. Even if you just download the Passionately Alive book and have a read and look at it, but then look at the events and the stuff that you're doing, because I think, the more people that you can have in your circle and interact with and pass on your learnings and teachings, the better the world will be.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I just can't say how passionate I am about this whole thing, because there's so much suffering that goes on because people don't know how to relate to their emotions and how to channel them in a positive way. It's the missing piece of the puzzle, as I mentioned, that's causing so much struggle and suffering. And as you said, anxiety and depression are major issues in our culture, and they are emotional issues. You can't deal with them cognitively. They're emotional issues, and that's why the medical profession is not making very much headway in here, because just medicating people is treating the symptoms and not the cause. And if you come and do this heartfelt experiential process work, you actually resolve the core issues that are going on. And so you don't need to keep on masking the what's going on by treating the symptoms. It's a huge piece.
It is a huge piece, and sometimes people will have a resistance to exploring that because it is so powerful, and even when you start talking about emotions, I know in many people it sort of starts triggering up, and there's this automatic suppression to say, don't even go there, don't even go there. All I can do is encourage people to explore. I think what you're doing and the resources that you provide are a great place to start.
Thanks. Yeah, well, thank you for having me on here. And, when people turn up passionately alive, sometimes if people have gone through emotional trauma in the past, they get scared of going back there again. And the thing that we need to realize is that it's repressing emotions that causes the problem. It's not feeling the emotions, it's repressing them. And so nobody has ever gone mad or died from expressing their emotions, but lots of people have killed themselves rather than feel their emotions. So it's avoiding the emotions that's causing the problems. And really, like you're saying, is we need to learn how gently and slowly, as we've been talking about, just to turn towards them and open up to them and accept them as part of our human experience, that, we need to develop some currency around to live life fully.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicholas.
It's
I can tell you that it has been a joy that I'm feeling in my heart of this experience on the show, which is great. And I really hope that the people listening to the show have opened themselves up to going on this journey of exploration and finding out how powerful this emotional intelligence piece can be. Again, if they want to connect with you, the best is just to go to eq.net.au and download the book and check out the Passion for Your Life event calendar.
Yeah, and there's lots of great articles there, and we run one-day events as well. So they're like an introduction to this work where you can come along in a really cost-effective way and meet me and actually experience the work, because as you mentioned, information is not transformation. And so you actually have to experience this to really get what it's about. You can read about it, but that's still in the story. And you really need to come and have an experience to actually get it.
Excellent. Thank you again, Nicholas, for this experience. And I look forward to staying connected with you and doing more work for myself and becoming even more passionately alive. Thanks again, Nicholas.
Awesome, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Transformed Man Show. For more great information, please go to transformedmanshow.com.